Hi, everyone. Welcome. Carl Steinbeck here tonight. Just wanted to touch bases. We have a hearing next week involving Donna Adelson, charged with first-degree murder and some other accompanying charges for the murder of Professor Dan Markell. This happened over 10 years ago, and she's been there languishing in Leon County Jail. For the first time, her attorneys are going to make an appearance in court on the 10th of December. They've actually been on the case officially since the 25th of October. For some reason, there was a long delay between then and now before Judge Everett is going to bring them before the court, and they make an appearance on the case management conference, which I thought was a little bit of a long delay. If you recall, I covered this earlier, where the judge's order on his own, he made an order saying that the new attorneys on the case, which are Zellman and Fulford, must perform a comprehensive conflict of interest check as it pertains to prior representation of co-conspirators, co-defendants, or witnesses in Leon County case numbers. And he listed the case numbers there for the other folks that had previously been prosecuted for this crime of murder against Professor Dan Markell. Then he also goes on to say that attorneys Zellman and Fulford at the upcoming case management, 10 December 2024, shall be fully prepared to address all conflict of interest issues or certify the representation of the defendant will be conflict-free. So that's really a rare thing for a judge to do. But as we see the conflict of interest, a massive conflict of interest that was done by Rashbaum, previous counsel to Donna since 2016. And then he took on Charlie's case a number of years later and included representing him at trial. So that was just something that was very unusual from a criminal law perspective. I never felt comfortable with it. And ultimately, the case for Donna, after she had been sitting there ready to go to trial the day of the trial, when it's supposed to start, all of a sudden, the attorney Rashbaum withdraws from the case. He says he has a conflict because Charlie Adelson, Donna's son, already convicted of first-degree murder of Professor Markell, and he's basically not going to agree that Rashbaum can represent both of them. So that threw a huge quagmire. Rashbaum had to withdraw. He never formally had any kind of endorsement from the Charlie Adelson, but I submit that he didn't even matter if he did have a written endorsement or not to have that conflict waived by both parties, because ultimately it's so diametrically opposed and going to be ultimately a constitutional issue that I think will not assure conflict-free counsel, which is guaranteed by the Constitution and case law and Supreme Court case law at that, I might add. So I just think, as I said earlier, I just think that this is something that's going to unravel. And before the Florida Supreme Court, ultimately the conflict there that Rashbaum had. And so he not only did he have to get bounced off of Donna's case, I think he's going to found to be basically completely ineffective in representing Charlie Adelson, even though Charlie's case was an absolute slam dunk, overwhelming case. It was one of the easiest convictions you could ever get as a prosecutor. And so in any event, I think with this coming up now here, Judge Everett is probably fuming mad that Rashbaum was able to pull this off in his court and nobody alerted to him the fact that Charlie was not only represented by Rashbaum, but Rashbaum for years had been representing Donna. So I'm not sure if he would have caught all that, but for any other attorneys that I've ever worked with, I think this is like rudimentary. You just don't do that kind of thing, especially on a murder case with co-defendants. And so what we have here now is the judge is very leery of these attorneys showing up, not understanding the conflict-free nature that they have to have. It's a constitutional right for a defendant. Even if they waive it, it could be of such a paramount importance that you're ineffective per se, which means automatically, in essence, as a rule of law, you cannot effectively represent them. And if you don't effectively represent a defendant under American law, you basically, it's the same as having no lawyer at all. And if you're entitled to a lawyer, you have to have one that's effective. And so what we have here is, I think, something that the judge is wanting to make sure there's no prior representation with these other co-defendants and unindicted co-conspirators, or even folks that have not been named unindicted co-conspirators but are on the target list, such as Harvey Adelson, Donna's husband, and Charlie's father. So I do think that the judge here at this upcoming hearing on the 10th, I think he is going to probe and not just ask for a certification, this take a yes answer that they're conflict free. I would I would hope at least that he's going to do some inquiry as to what other prior representations they have had with any of these uh, tangential defendants, co-defendants, and any of their attorneys. So when they've been on the case since the 25th of October, did they obtain the file paperwork, for example, from Rashbaum? Did Rashbaum turn his file over? Did he have conflicted information? Did he have information from Charlie there? And if they looked over that information, then we could have a conflict again, starting all over. So that's why I sort of a little bit leery about this long lag time to make sure this thing isn't going to unravel some other future conflicts. But in any event, I do think that there needs to be some kind of scrutiny of what kind of handoff was made between Rashbaum and these new attorneys to make sure there wasn't a contamination follow-on. Keep in mind that when Charlie had been called as a witness for Donna's case, the lawyers thought they could hire a third attorney on the case who was basically firewalled from knowing anything about Donna's case for in large part, and also anything from Charlie's case. And so that attorney basically was just going to do the cross examination without knowing all the on. And so based on that, um, the thing was very strange, and the fact that you cannot firewall different parts of the case like that. You have to be fully up to speed as a defense attorney. So in any event, I think if there's some carryover effect where these guys might have been sharing information, that could also be an issue. So hopefully that's not going to be one. But they need to be on their toes and be asking the right questions. The judge needs to, and as well as the prosecutor, they can ask questions. What are they doing to make sure this is not another thing that's going to come crashing down on their heads? So in any event, yeah, we've so I think it's been like over I think 30, almost 40 days that since the last live stream. So just wanted to jump on in here tonight. Some of y'all asking if I'm okay and stuff like that. So no, thank you very much. Leslie and I have been house hunting, and she's got approved from her firm to be able to work out of Texas. So we're hopefully going to be in Texas by the early part of January, and so that's what we've been busy doing. And so with that on our target list, and there's not a whole lot going on in this case as well. And it is sort of, I saw somebody said it was sort of demoralizing to see that these cases are sort of just languishing. And what happens if Charlie's case does get busted, as I'm worried about. So I do think that it's very, very much something that can be discouraging when you stop to think of how this conflict of interest issue is been a can of worms, and the cans aren't done being opened yet. So we'll see that it's very much it could be something that, can you imagine the shock if Charlie's case gets reversed by one of the appellate courts in Florida? So talk about a gut punch. I do hope that ultimately that won't be the case. And I haven't really seen a whole lot of other stuff while I've been off the net here. But I saw a couple of things where folks are talking about some things, even some attorneys talking about different aspects of this case. And it was frustrating from my perspective to see, because I did not think that they had all the facts and understood the law. But then again, they weren't criminal law practitioners. So in any event, that gets me fired up to talk about stuff, because it's frustrating to see conversations about stuff that's very detailed, specific criminal law, and I don't see that. I don't see that precision level of detail that I'm trying to convey here. So, in any event, if I'm a little bit too much into the weeds, that's my intent here. I'm not covering a general overview of cases. So, if you're new to the channel, I'm not trying to cover the case from A to Z in terms of how the facts developed and the history of the case. This is pretty much already a case where a situation where I'm for those of you here, a lot of you guys are, I'm so familiar with your names over the last, I guess it's almost 2 years now, that it's, you guys are part of the support network family for the Markells. So in any event, I'm going to cover just one more item, I think, before I go to questions. So if you guys have any questions, get ready to tee those up, and we will have the opportunity to get to those. So save them for right now, and then once I turn it over and I'm done doing my little monologue here, then we can go ahead and start taking those. So I would say that the other thing that that concerns me is the this issue about when they're going to be ready for trial. Is Donna going to be okay with her attorneys needing till next summer, the end of next summer, to be able to proceed to trial? I think Donna would want to get this trials over with right away. And how much are these attorneys prepared really to go to trial before summer? Because one of the things that's really weird about there in Tallahassee, and I'm not familiar with this in any court system I've ever practiced in front of, where this basically they don't have cases in the summer, and so everything has to be jammed up right before summer break. And because keep in mind they have a number of universities there, including Florida State University. And the other thing is that they jam them in the fall, so you got a several month window there where you really don't have any big trials going on. So, is this something that that's going to be where the prosecution is ready to go and the defense going to be ready to go, so that we could get this thing knocked out sooner than later? And because it's really important to Markells to see this case moving forward. They've been on pins and needles. They thought finally this thing's going to kick off. Donna's been able to escape accountability for her involvement on this case for so many years that is finally teeing off. And now, now we have to start over in essence here from last month, a little over a month, I should say. So in any event, hopefully these lawyers will be ready to go, and we won't have to wait that long. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over for questions. So if you do have questions, the right emoji for question marks distinguishes that from the easiest from other just chatter among y'all. So Isabel's asking, do you think that Donna has a really hard time finding new lawyers? I can't even understand how one of the new lawyers seems to be conflicted again. Well, I think the difference for Donna is that you still have a lot of money available to throw at attorneys. So most attorneys don't have defendants coming into their office with up to $1 million or $2 million, as I'm sure that the Adelsons still have, to be able to pay for the attorney. So not only is she hiring one attorney, but hiring two attorneys on a murder case. And what attorneys do a lot of times is that they'll charge the rate based on what the client can afford. And so if you have big deep pockets like that for the Adelsons, they're going to have big fees again to pay. So that's one thing as a prosecutor. I know I like to see if there's financial punishment before I even go to trial. The defendant, that's a good thing to see if they're spending all that money on attorney's fees. And in this case, it's not going to matter if the prosecution does their job right. Make sure the case isn't conflicted. They'll get the conviction. And so what we need to do is just make sure that these attorneys don't have any conflicts. And I do not think there's going to be a conflict in the sense that you had with Rashbaum. I do think there's an appearance issue. If I was a judge, I'd be very troubled by a former judge that, as I understand it, was the probate judge over Dan Markel's estate. And even if the judge was merely somebody signing off on the estate and closing the estate as a part of the normal case file, it just looks really bad. And I think most attorneys would not do that. So that is disappointing to see. And I think it's really it's more insulting to the Markells than anything. So that's what I don't like to see. But I don't think there's going to be a conflict per se where it's going to unravel the whole case based on these attorneys, unless there is something around. It looks like my video went out there for a second. I'm seeing a slow lag there once in a while, but hopefully you guys still have the sound working. So YB's asking, do you think Wendy could be behind these conflicts? An appeal issue for Charlie Donna wanting speedy trial in all places? Could this be a strategy? I don't, I think that could be something that maybe if Rashbaum was so tied into the Adelsons and making all this money, and he's sort of just lost himself, not really thinking about the conflicts issue. But I have a hard time thinking any attorney would basically take a fall for a client, knowing that they were going to get in trouble with the state bar with some kind of ethics complaint and stuff like that. Maybe he just didn't foresee it. I don't know. I just think it's more or less the fact that, like, look at the prosecution; they didn't get it, and the judge didn't get it. So I don't think there's any malicious intent there. I think he's just thinking, I'll take as many co-defendants as I can as long as I'm making $1 million off each of them or whatever it is. it's very, very much a high dollar amount. You would think that he would have asked for them. So yeah, thanks. I see the sound is good. So so anyway, I don't think Wendy is behind this at all. And so I think Wendy's sort of been staying clear. I don't think she did anything to try to find her mother a lawyer, or her dad a lawyer for that matter, because they've had at different times different lawyers, and they've represented both of them. But and I don't think she was involved in finding Charlie a lawyer, because Wendy doesn't know criminal law, so she wouldn't know who the go-to person down there. And so that's my take on that. Sally Vella is saying, "Do I think Donna is so defiant she'll get stronger? Do you think this will wear her down in age before her trial?" Well, I do think that there's, you could have a mixture of both. I think overall your health has to decline. I think she could be very angry and the anger could translate into having a zeal to go fight this thing. I think she's very mad at at Wendy for basically ghosting her and leaving her in this position. And um, I think the defiance that she naturally is having, though, is offset by the fact that she's in a confined cell most of the time, and even if she's in open base, she's in their confined cell at night. It's very loud. It's not comfortable. The food is absolutely terrible. It's not very nutritious, and so it's sort of like, I don't know. I've never had to eat that kind of food, but from what I gather, and I've been to many jails, anywhere from Europe to United States to Guantanamo, where we have the Guantanamo detainees. So I would say that in all those situations, the food's not going to be that great, and it is going to help you age faster. So I think, as we've seen from her, mentally she may appear very fully alert and able to assist her counsel in formulating defense. But I think it will take her toll, all that bad food, because she's used to eating, I'm sure, the best of the best food down there in Miami. So Linda Mon is asking, who and what is protecting Wendy all these years? Obviously, but who and how is she not getting shackled? Yeah, that's really, I mean, that was really one of the main things that that this channel is about, is making sure there's accountability and the injustice to the boys. So the injustice to the boys is the real kicker. That they've been denied so much visitation with the Markells over the years, and ineffective. It's just basically, in a way, not only Dan was killed that day, but to some degree, it's like the grandsons were killed off as well, because there's been such limited visitation. And I believe that some of that's, there is some ability to have some better communication. But I think if it wasn't for a worry of a pending court case hanging over Wendy's head, I think there'd be zero visitation. I don't think there's any interest whatsoever in really having a close relationship for the boys with any of the Markells. Aunt Nancy's saying, if Charlie wants his, hopefully the sound's still going in. Okay. And so I just think that if it did happen that way, I wish the state would not be opposing the motion to have this go back to the trial court to further review the issue of whether Charlie had conflicted counsel or not. I think it's ultimately going to get to that. And if not, it's going to tie it up even longer, and Charlie's going to be in jail, or prison, I should say, this whole time. So I think the odds of them being tried together, they should have been tried together. Just think how much easier this would have been. I think if they would have been tried together, I think Rashomon would have realized, I can't sit there and call both witnesses or decide to call one, not the other. And I think that would have probably forced him to realize that this is too problematic. And hopefully this alerted the judge is more problematic, and also the prosecution, but everyone was asleep at the switch. So don't know for sure, but I would think that would have been a wake up call. And in any event, Rusty Tugboat saying, will Donna try and lay most of this on Charlie, or will she contend she was just protecting the family with the payments? I'm not if you're asking a question, what I think she's going to do, I don't really want to get into that because if any defense is watching this, as Rashmam used to watch channels like this, from what I'm told, to find out strategy and stuff like that. So I'm not about to give them any indication of what I think they will do, because then maybe they'll think that's the most likely thing to do. And so I just don't want to go down that road. But in any event, she's going to have to come up with some kind of story along the lines that she's going to try to play off this as innocent, and just like Charlie tried to play off as innocent, but it's not going to work. The tapes are there. Her own words will convict her, and you can't undo those tapes for how much it implicates her in this murder. Kaylee O'Brien, you're asking any word from the prosecution in Tallahassee? Crickets from Campbell and Kappelman. Yeah, I mean, after their last press conference, we haven't heard anything from them, and they basically made it sound like they have other cases, and it sounded almost like more important cases. So don't expect much out of us for this case. So in any event, I just think that they want to lay low, and that we'll see. I'm sure Georgia in court on the 10th here next week. So in any event, we'll also find out then when the trial date's going to be scheduled. Hopefully, there won't be any continuances beyond that time. But no, there's not been any more public statements from them at all. Nor would I expect them to be. But other than the fact that I would expect them to say that they're announcing that Wendy has been arrested and is being transported from Texas back to Florida. Nancy Miller is asking, what takes these people so long to try these cases? Same thing with the Ferris trial. That was in 2018. A wife just got convicted on Thursday. That was another bizarre case. Yeah, that's one I'm not familiar with, so I can't help you out on that case. But I just think it's part of it. It's like uh, lack of zealous, tenacious desire to get these people rolled up and prosecuted. So I if you're just working as a government employee, you can just work set hours. You don't have to work extra overtime. I don't know how much overtime they're working, but you think maybe they're looking at, like Jack Campbell said, they got so many murder cases that they're really not trying to rush any one of them too much. Whichever ones are easiest to go after, that one's maybe the one they're going to go after the soonest. But in any event, I do think they still are going to prosecute and go after Wendy Adelson. So it's just a matter of time. It's just taking a little bit longer. I think this hiccup with the conflict of interest is maybe letting her be able to flee justice for another year or so. But in the end, ultimately, I do think that they're going to do the right thing. Charlie's appeal. The there was a motion for the case to return back to the trial court. I did not see a full appellate brief, so why they did it that way and didn't do a full brief as well, I don't understand Florida law that way, but it does seem odd that we wouldn't see a full brief beyond that. And so the courts apparently allow that because this Offerman, he's a expert in appellate issues in the criminal law setting. So I assume he's doing what he thinks is most appropriate, and maybe he's trying to force the court to go ahead and look at this thing. Which I did say this for a while, that I thought the biggest appellate issue in Charlie's case was a conflict of interest issue. So we'll see what happens, and but that remains to be seen. Apple Jacks, you're saying if you are prosecuted by the state and found not guilty, does the state have to pay your attorney's fees? No, if you privately retain your attorneys in every place in America, you would have to, that's on you. The state would not reimburse you. And even in some states where you're having a public defender, you got to pay for them. Even if you're acquitted, you have to pay for them. So, yeah, in that sense, it's not really fair, is it? But that's what the system is. Piebird is asking, is a possible plea deal available to Donna? I would say that if Donna wants to plead, it's not really realistic, because she's given her age, they're not going to whittle down a sentence that she's going to entertain, and then she'd also have to roll over on other family members, to include her husband, to be considered credible. So I just don't see that happening at all. Watercolor Mama is asking, maybe Wendy was right about Tallahassee after all. It's so frustrating to stand by and watch this poor family be set aside year after year. Yeah, I think that the issue about I'm they obviously are not what Wendy thought they were. These are people that are highly educated in the prosecution team, and so why they're not being more aggressive. But I see that a lot of times where you have issues where people are highly educated and they're just not as aggressive as you would like them to be. So yeah, I think that's why so many people are following this case, is that they would like to see the prosecution be much more aggressive, but for some reason that's just not happening. And look at the fact that they couldn't try at least Charlie and Don together. Those would have been such a perfect match to have try the same case. And if they want to try to sever it and have two separate trials, and so be it. But at least try to jam them together and get this show on the road. But in any event, and now we are so much later, and she still hasn't gone to trial yet. So it's just very, very much bewildering and confusing as to how they can be not understanding how good a case they have against these Adelsons. Indigo J is saying delay, delay. Maybe the mass of people putting pressure on them might move away to other cases and relieve the pressure on the Tallahassee bunch. Or am I too cynical? Um, I guess you're saying maybe the mass of people putting pressure might move away to other cases. Um, I I would say I think if we complain about what's going on with the Adelson case, then I think that that's the way to get them to have to address it. Because if the public is still demanding justice, I think that would be not the normal thing people do when people are putting pressure on, just to basically duck and run to do something else. Because after all, they do have Wendy listed as an unindicted co-conspirator, so they do believe that they have the evidence there to think she's guilty. So, and there is enough to convict. So, why are they waiting for it? It's just one of these things we don't have insider knowledge on why they're so slow on this. But yes, Sheeny girl saying the justice system needs major repair. It's like any system. It's up to the people, and different prosecutors will size up evidence different ways. And so some prosecutors are more, I guess, they're more afraid to go forward on a case unless they feel that there's overwhelming evidence. There's no way they could mess up the case. And so, and others are like, I know I can get a conviction on this kind of evidence. I don't need to wait around and try to have it um, slowly develop something that I think will make it more comfortable for me to go to trial. So that's what it comes down to a lot of times from what I see on cases. Lily Benjamin is saying, what's the average number of years prosecutors work for the state? I'm fearful we may lose Ms. Dugan and Ms. Kaplan to change their career path. No, I think they've been there long enough. They tend to be there for the rest of their legal career, unless I think Georgia probably wouldn't want to run for office or anything like that. So I think they're happy where they're at. I'm not worried about that. A change out. I definitely think Ms. Dugan is a critical part of the prosecution, and I think she'll stick around as well. Shiloh's saying, what do you think about Wendy's stance is on the new updates? Yeah, she's probably trying to just not even think about it. She doesn't want to hear about it. She's probably not really looking at much. And she's just talking to her lawyer and getting the minimum amount of information from him. So I think she's probably feeling like, hey, the more longer they have to focus on trying to get mom convicted, and they're dealing with Charlie's appeal, just knowing those two issues are floating out there, and mom doesn't have a trial date. I think it gives her some sense of breathing room. But like I say, I think it's ultimately going to be something that we're going to see her behind bars as well. So, Shiloh, what we're waiting on is the Court of Appeals to decide the motion that his attorney raised to have this issue of Rashomon being conflicted being decided by the trial court judge, which is Judge Everett, and they're wanting to have that issue fleshed out more before the Court of Appeals rules on the conflict itself. And and I think it makes sense because there's not a lot of information developed on the trial level record as to what Rashomon was doing and how he became involved in both murder cases. So I do think that ultimately he's going to have to get on the witness stand and have a lot of explaining to do. And you don't have witnesses testifying in appellate proceedings. Okay, so on appeal, you just go by what happened at the trial court level. You don't bring in fresh evidence normally, unless there's something like a motion for a new trial because there's exculpatory information. But this is not exculpatory information. This is an issue where it was something that should have been recognized well beforehand of Rashmo's conflict, and it just was sat on and ignored. So I'm sort of losing my voice here. And Maria saying, "Can I move to Florida for years to take over the prosecutor?" I don't think I want to sit for a Florida bar. I think I'm a little bit beyond that, but boy, it sure would be tempting if I was already living in Florida to do something like that and just to put pressure on the state attorney's office that way. But no, I'm not. I don't have any intent to do there. And like I say, I'm in the process of us moving to Texas instead. But yeah, I think if the Adelsons committed this crime in Texas, they would have all been locked up and prosecuted and convicted by now. The Florida Adelsons, I might add. Edward Tozer is saying after the DA's interview a couple months back, I didn't see a sense of urgency from him. Yeah, he was basically. I was just shocked by that. It was really cringy and sad to see that from the Markel's perspective. He was unapologetic. He didn't obviously didn't understand the law and conflicts of counsel, and he made basically his comment was to the effect of, we can't do anything about the right to a lawyer for a defendant. We don't have a right to intervene in that, but they can ask the judge to bounce a lawyer and cite the case law that Wheat versus United States, and that's the one I had mentioned before the judge ruled, and ultimately he cited the same case law, and to me it was a clear cut issue that Rashomon should have been bounced from Donna's case, but it never happened, and in any event, yeah, no sense of urgency. I agree. Edward, you're asking then, did Wendy and the boys relocate to Texas? That's what I understand is going on. So where exactly they live and stuff like that, I'm not gonna try to find that information out. But yeah, definitely I understand somewhere in the Austin area, which is the capital, south central part of Texas. Glitters is saying, "What is so crazy to me is that Wendy doesn't visit. If I didn't have anything to do with it, I would work to still see my family." Yeah, that's one of the things you would do. I'm sure you'd also let the boys see the Markells, go up there and visit them in Canada, go up to their dad's grave site there in Canada, and they don't do any of that. They never, even if any of the Markells come down to try to visit them, what are they given, like 45 minutes or an hour of visitation supervised? So having nonstop supervised visitation is to me a very much a sign of guilt, and they're worried about the boys saying something that could be used against them in a criminal prosecution. Linda Mon is a state that holds justice in the highest regard. Well, every justice system does have problems. I think that from the states I've seen, I think Texas does have probably the best system. I believe I'm a big defender of the justice system and rights for the accused and making sure that there's not abuses by the prosecutor. Here, what you see in Tallahassee is prosecution not being tough enough. What I've seen is the other perspective where prosecutors are running roughshod over people, trampling on their rights. All they care about is how many convictions they can get. Those are the kind of things that I think is really important to have laws in place that can allow some kind of like check and balance against overreach by the government. For example, like in let's just say in the state of Iowa, you can get indicted on a felony and you don't have a grand jury for that process. Whereas in Texas, any felony, you do have a grand jury. You can present evidence to the grand jury. You don't have a right to be there, nor does your attorney, but you can submit um, a packet of evidence. You could also have witnesses outside the courtroom and say in a witness exhibit list what you have to present if the jury wants to hear it. So sort of like you have a freebie to present anything that even wouldn't be admissible in a trial. You have the ability to present that in Texas. So I haven't seen that in any other state. You also have jury nullification type instructions. For example, if you lose a motion as a defense counsel by the judge to have some evidence suppressed, you can have an instruction to the jury where if the jury thinks the Fourth Amendment was violated and they give an instruction on the law by the judge, that ultimately the jury could then decide to throw out the evidence. So anyway, there's a lot of different things I could go into where you have rights to jury trial. Jury trial, I think, is one of the most important equalizers to prevent politics from infecting the justice for the parties, because even if you have a judge, judges have, it could come down to that one judge likes one attorney better than the other, and that could decide the outcome of the case. Also, one of the downsides, though, in Texas, is that you can contribute to the judge's political campaign. So, is the judge going to decide in favor of the lawyer who's donated the most money to his campaign? So, there can be that kind of corruption as well. But ultimately, if you go to the jury trial, the jury, like I say, is the equalizer from all that kind of potential for corruption and injustice. Anna Maria is asking exactly how are the boys now? I think they're like 14 and 15, and so yeah, I mean, by the time Charlie and Grandma and Wendy get prosecuted and Harvey as well, you're talking about they'll be in college and maybe college graduates. The rate this thing's going. Billy Benjamin's asking, would the Markells have any standing in Texas for grandparent visitation? That's something that there's not a lot of grandparent rights that are conferred to grandparents across the states. I remember something came out in the 1990s about that, where Texas was trying to be proactive to give grandparents rights, but that was struck down by the courts. And so this Markell Act that afforded the the Markells visitation for the boys in the event that Wendy's convicted is not in effect because Wendy's not in Florida anymore. So they don't have a similar law like that in Texas. So that's a sad thing, and maybe it's one of the motivations of why Wendy left Florida, because they don't have that kind of protection for the Markells. Lawn Lit 827 saying, Carl, we cover the Karen Reed retrial. Is there's real injustice going on there? I'm not exactly tracking what's going on. I heard there was something in front of the Supreme Court. I do think the Supreme Court ultimately may throw out some of those charges, and because it had to do with the jury confusion on what they were supposed to do, their role was, and how they're supposed to sift through the evidence and vote properly. So I've not been following that enough detail to give any kind of accurate prediction. But if there is a retrial, then I'll decide at that time. And that was one I was really surprised that people were on both sides of the house, just really really acting sort of outlandish on this. So in any event, not sure yet, but we'll see. I mean, if the Supreme Court tosses the second-degree murder conviction out and whatnot, there's maybe the state will be reassessing the case and only go with one charge. But even if it's just one charge, I think there's still going to be a huge media frenzy about this, and also a true crime following frenzy about it. So I just hope people can remain civil about it. Anthony DeFilipso is saying, of course, interest has waned. There hasn't really been anything happening, out of sight, out of mind. Well, I think that's something that is happening while there's no Adelson in the defendant chair in a jury trial, criminal setting, being accused of murdering Dan Markell. But I think once we start getting this thing teed up and it goes back to trial, I do think that we'll have all the other main media coverage as well, things like Court TV, Dateline 2020, that kind of thing. So. I think the interest that any interest that has waned. I think it's also some fatigue of like, well, when is this prosecution team down in Tallahassee going to get their act together? So it's understandable, but I think ultimately, once it starts getting teed up again and moving forward, we'll have that interest back again. Yeah, I did say we are moving to Texas here. Hopefully by January we'll be down there. So that is something that we plan on making happen. So yes, that's not my lamp, by the way. John loaned that to me. So yeah, it's a cool lamp, isn't it? All right, let's see. Linda Mon, you're planning on seeing us through on the Adelson's trial. That's the plan. Yes, I don't plan on shutting down or anything like that. So it's it's really frustrating to see these things just drag on. I never thought this thing would be taking as long as it has, and but in the end, as long as they're still going after him one by one, even though I disagree with that prosecution strategy, um, then I think that in the end, you know, delayed justice will happen, but at least they'll get some convictions on these other Adelsons. Dixie Doodles, you're saying I sent emails to Jack Campbell. Please send urging him to arrest Wendy. Yeah, I'm not trying to get people riled up to do something like that. I do think that there is an interest, and if you have a personal interest in letting wherever there's injustice in the world, if you speak out about it, I think there is some benefit, and it makes people take note of it. Whether it actually makes a difference or not, I don't know, but it to me, I think that it's this case has following of folks all around the world, and I do get some feedback from other folks, and I know one of them told me that they got some kind of like uh, not a very nice email back in return saying basically to uh, to leave them alone and quit bothering them or something to that effect. And I is saying the CA and DA trials seem to be a game of doing and undoing. Given that it might take years to untangle these, what are your views on the real chance of the prosecutors of not going at all for Wendy and Harvey Adelson? I do think that the uh, the facts are still going to bear out. The evidence is still there. They still have the evidence against Wendy, and I think that there was always a potential that the uh, the longer Charlie's in jail, and if he knows his appeals are exhausted, and even if he gets a new trial and gets convicted at some point, no matter how long a delay is for Wendy being prosecuted, I think ultimately you're looking at there's going to be some kind of evidence where they finally do feel like they have enough to go forward and get her prosecuted. So I just hope it's not years, and I hope it's less than a year here, based on the fact they do have enough evidence right now to go after her. So that's the one of the things that just really is astounding. Uh, Charlie Krim, last I'd heard he was not in Florida anymore, so I assume he's back in South Dakota. I did not ask, but there's a strong likelihood he went back to South Dakota. South Dakota has a real lockdown information on who is there, and especially if somebody like that is in a high threat environment like Charlie, I think they might try to keep that from being released to the public. But my expectation is that he's in South Dakota. I see somebody's asking if saying that you thought I lived in Texas. Well, I have a practice there in Texas, but I'm across the Lake Texoma, which is on the border with Oklahoma. So we actually live here in Oklahoma now, but like I say, we're going into process of moving to Texas. So Janie Garnett is saying, do you think things will get rolling in 2025? I do think that once Wendy is, Donna's convicted, then I think Wendy's going to have the target on her back, and she's going to really be nervous at that point. Because keep in mind, they did arrest Donna right after Charlie got convicted, although her racing to the airport helped speed up that process. But they at least they had the initiative to go get her and not say, well, she got away, we're not going to hustle and try to get her arrested. So they jumped through hoops that day to make sure they had the warrant for arrest in effect so they could bring her back up to Tallahassee for prosecution. Patricia is saying, I don't think that pressuring the DA's office will have any effect. I think they're ultimately going to prosecute Wendy when the children are older. Opinion. I see a lot of questions and comments about that where people think the prosecution is just waiting till the boys age out of needing care and they're on their own and in college. But I just have never believed that any prosecution office would say we're going to let somebody get away with murder while the kids are raising, age out and of the high school system. So I don't think that's something that is ever contemplated, nor should it be. So you really need to go after them. If one parent murders another parent of a child or children, I think that justice shouldn't be delayed. And even though kids lose both parents, one due to the murder, and the other one due to the fact that they're going to spend the rest of their life in behind bars, and then so be it. That's justice ultimately. Anna Maria is asking, what happens if Harvey should pass away until Donna's trial over? Will Wendy even attend the funeral? Such a strange family. I'm not quite sure. I'm tracking your question on Harvey pass away until. I think if you're saying if Harvey, let's say Harvey dies before Donna's trial is over, um, will Wendy attend the funeral? I think Wendy would for Harvey's sake, but I think for her mom, if Donna dies while incarcerated, that's something I would. I think she's trying to stay away from her mom, as much as she can. And whether it is a funeral or not, who knows? But ultimately, I hope Donna's convicted and the conviction sticks before ultimately she does pass on. Don's asking how Leo's doing. Leo's doing fine. He's very vocal and very emotionally needy, being a Bengal cat. He's very much more emotionally needy than other cats. He's always wanted to be petted and stuff like that. It seems like I can never pet him enough. But anyway, him and the other two are doing good as well. So, Linda Mon, is there a case that stands out to you in your career that you can tell us about? Um, I I can have a number of cases that can jump out. I don't know if I want to bore you all with them. Um, I've had let's see. I think what as a prosecutor, I think those don't stand out to me as much as they do as a defense attorney when I've been a defense attorney, and I think that the ones that are the biggest relief are the ones that you may be worried that you're going to lose, and but then it turns out fine, and the justice happened in that particular case. I remember one case. It wasn't a criminal case; it was actually in juvenile court, where a father was accused of shaken baby syndrome, and they had separated the 3-month-old from his father and his mother, who was also a suspect. But ultimately, it was an issue where, based on all the doctors that the state had, it looked like this was a case of shaken baby. There was bilateral retinal hemorrhage of the eyes, a fractured skull. The baby was in intensive care for a while, but ultimately survived. But it was really scary to think, that this guy could lose his son, being accused of that. And ultimately, there was a doctor that was very credible that came and testified and said that everything that my client testified to was consistent with the fall that he described, that resulted in the injury. So ultimately, reunification happened, and there was no other further incidents. And I do, in fact, every once in a while hear from that client. There's other clients I won't get into, but they've been railroaded before I got involved in the case, and I was able to stop them from being railroaded. And so I can tell you, when I was a younger attorney, I used to go to trial a lot more than as a more seasoned attorney, because I just go to trial and we would get an acquittal. And nowadays I sort of use that experience to be able to forge a dismissal of charges rather than having to go to trial. So that's sort of what I like doing now. But so anyway, that's sort of that's all I can say now. I have had some murder cases as well that that I was able to work out deals on. I had one where the guy murdered his 6-month-old son. That was a military case, and we got him a plea deal. But A lot of my cases that were contested, I can tell you they're mostly sexual assault, rape type cases, and those were the ones that always turned out. Every single case I had of those turned out well. I've not lost a single one of those, and I thought the outcome was just. I have gotten um, convictions as a prosecutor though for those kind of crimes. So and rightfully so is that as well. So anyway, there's a lot of different stuff I could talk about, but I won't bore you with that tonight. Lily Benjamin is saying, I hope everyone stays well, but in the event a witness passes away, can an affidavit or prior testimony on the record be admissible? The only way that's admissible is if they have testified with the opportunity for the defendant. So if a witness dies and Donna didn't have a chance to be there when there was cross-examination on a deposition, then basically they cannot get their evidence before the jury. So that is something that also can come back to bite the prosecution if they don't get these cases of trial soon, or a key witness dies, and there's no way to get the evidence in. There's not really any depositions that were occurring on Donna's case that were critical to help the prosecution. So yeah, that could have been something that comes back to bite the prosecution in the future. Sure. Lauren Crime is saying, do you think the oldest estranged brother will be called to testify? I've been saying that Dr. Rob Adelson, he's somebody that would be totally credible and would really talk about how weird the behavior was after Dan Markel was murdered, and the fact that the how they responded to his questions and whatnot. It'd be really revealing to show the conscience of mind of being guilty for the murder of Dan Markel, the other Florida Adelsons. So yeah, I would hope and expect they call him, but he's never been called yet, and I do think that the prosecution tends to streamline stuff too much. That's a concern of mine. The two says that I've heard of two people who have wrote to Dawn and she's wrote back she misses baking and cooking, but is helping tutor others making a GED. Okay, well that's good. She's staying productive that way. Um, but I don't really have a comment on that. So anyway, I don't think she's doing. I think she's just doing stuff to try to overcome the issues of uh, being bored out of your mind and going stir crazy, especially at her age. Keep in mind, she's never seen the inside of a jail cell before, and now 73 and 74. She's been there over a year and has more to go. Here's one that the two is you're also asking, it's an issue for me to defend criminals. That would be my biggest issue. That's one of the things I tried to avoid in the beginning of my career after I served my prosecution stint in what was then Fort Hood, Texas, which was a big court martial mill for the military. And I thought I'd never do defense work because I thought you have to defend the guilty. But the longer I was a prosecutor, I thought, yeah, there's some issues here, and the law enforcement is not always on the up and up. So I missed the courtroom so much that I decided to go back to that. So to me, it's like a legal chess game. I think the Constitution provides us the presumption of innocence, and that's important to have. Otherwise, if you're in a system where you're presumed guilty and you don't have a jury of your peers deciding your fate, it'd be very easy to get convicted wrongfully if you're innocent in any other kind of system. So I do think we do have the best system despite its flaws. And so what I look at as being, I'm just doing a legal chess game, and I'm helping ensure a constitutional right that it's been in effect for well over 200 years. And is it something where the guilty can get off? Yes, but is it also a system where we don't want to have the innocent could be unfairly prosecuted? So, given those two trade-offs, I think we got the best. We do have the best system anywhere in the world. Harmony Ricky's saying, I've heard Donna really likes new female attorney. Do you think the judge will deny her due to prior conflict? I don't think it's a ethical conflict because she never represented any of the Adelsons. And so it just her standing as a judge, looking over the presiding over the probate matters for Dan Markel's estate. I don't see anything in the rules that would make that an issue of where the Judge Everett could bounce her off the case. But like I say, I think it's the optics of it. I think it just looks bad, and it's just Me personally, I think it's insulting to the Markells, and I don't respect that decision. Janet Garney, or Janie Garnets, you're asking, do I think Rob Wilson has any desire to visit his mom in jail? That's a good question. I don't think so. I don't think his mom wants to see him. Number one. So in order for anybody to visit somebody in jail, you have to be put on the visitors list. So I think that ship has sailed, and he's on the witness list for a reason because he's going to testify as to the strange behavior of Donna and Harvey and Wendy after the murder of Professor Markel. Okay, Veronica, you're asking who is she hired as her attorneys? I haven't been following the case. I needed a break. Oh, she hired two local regional folks. One is Joshua Zellman, Zelman. The other one's Jackie Fulford, Fulford. Sorry. And what happens is these two are apparently brand new on the case. They don't have any other prior history that we know of, but they're going to have to certify that before the judge. And in any event, Fulford was a previous judge there, had some kind of issues where she was under investigation for misconduct as a judge, and then somehow retired, and don't know how that all got sorted out. But apparently, there's no finding of wrongdoing, but to follow up on the allegations. But she did get removed from the bench, and for medical reasons I guess the official response. But in any event, I've heard that she's a good attorney, and I assume Zellman is too. So hopefully they understand the conflict issue, and they're not going to get set this thing up for a massive colossal failure by having something that can derail the case on constitutional grounds, like I'm afraid it will for Charlie. Linda Mon, would you encourage the Markel brothers to go into law? Oh, that's a maybe I I don't I'm not somebody that is a big advocate for telling people to go to law school. If people come to me and say they want to be a lawyer, I ask them why. And usually by the time I get done questioning them on that, they realize they probably don't want to because maybe they don't have the right motives. And so anyway, I'm not a big advocate for telling people to go to law school. And it is a very much a heavy lifting kind of deal to go through law school. I have to sit for bars and having to deal with attorneys and conflicts. And think about it, you're dealing with people, if you're in the criminal law arena or any kind of trial attorney, you're dealing with people that are, and family law, I should add, you're dealing with people at their worst behavior. And so it can be very taxing on your body. And you also got to keep in mind, if you look at what I just saw my wife Leslie look at to wave into the Texas bar, they warn you about all the different hazards to your health of being a lawyer, including the high incidence of drug and alcohol abuse. And so I know that personally also from dealing with other lawyers that there's a high incidence rate. It was one of the highest, I think, out there because of the pressure. And so, yeah, I do think that you really got to have a specialty niche, and you got to really find out what area of law you probably want to get into before you go to law school. Unless you want to go to law school just for the sake of getting a law degree to help you in the business world or something like that. That's actually why I originally went to law school, is just to help me become a better businessman. But then it sort of grew on me, and then I decided, yeah, I want to be a lawyer, and justice was my sort of my main thing I was wanting to pursue at that point. So. Bugs Bunny's brother is this new lawyer's toss out. Could Donna say the delay is unconstitutional? She had to ask for speedy trial. She had asked for speedy trial 30 months ago. No, she didn't actually ask for speedy trial last time. I think her first attorney, Descalzo, said they wanted to have didn't want to have a long delay before trial, but there was never official demand for speedy trial. And once that kicks in, it's a totally different process. And so I don't think that her attorneys want to put themselves under a gun that much. It really puts the defense attorneys under a huge amount of pressure. And the prosecution, after all, does have the witnesses lined up. This is just basically a repeat of what they did for some of these other trials, especially for Charlie. So I just don't think that the new attorney is going to get, any of these two new attorneys are going to get tossed out. Number one, and even if they did, I think if both of them got tossed, there's always an opportunity for her to hire new counsel, and so I don't see that being an issue where the delay is going to be anything that's an appellate issue to worry about. Harmony Reiki, you're asking, can I comment on the Daniel Penny judge's ruling today? A hung jury, judge dismissed first count, sent jury deliberated on second count. I am not following that case at all. I did see there's a headline on that. So, but sorry, I can't help out on that. I know there's a lot of other stuff going on, including that the guy on the run for murdering that CEO up in New York City. So that's quite something there. And I do think that that guy's probably going to wind up getting captured here if he doesn't kill himself beforehand in the next couple days. Blair is saying this is one murder case. Why is it that not all suspects been arrested? Harvey and Wendy as well, especially Wendy Adelson as the main beneficiary of this crime. That's one of the reasons that I think that so many people follow this case is that it's just really one of the most outlandish true crime cases out there, and how so many things can have these twists and turns and bizarre setbacks and outcomes and redos and stuff like that. It's really, um, I think it's really also a good lesson learned kind of thing. If you want to, if you do want to go to law school and be a lawyer, or you are a lawyer and think about getting into trial work or criminal law arena, you look at what these kind of lawyers are doing, and you can see what's good and what's bad without even knowing anything about the law. So, in any event, that's another thing that struck me is I remember hearing somebody that said Rashomon did a really good job for Charlie, and I was like at trial, and I'm like, I don't. He didn't have a lot to work with, but I thought I did not agree with that. Lily, you're asking, do I know anything about Charlie Ellison's appellate attorney? The internet regards him as the best in the state. Yeah, I think he's probably one of the best in the state. I'd agree with that assessment. And he's right there in Tallahassee, and that's where the Supreme Court is. And he seems to know his law, and he also he's the only one besides myself I know that was saying that all three of the attorneys for Donna were conflicted. Other attorneys I heard were saying that only Rashomon was conflicted, not the other two. So that was surprising to me because that's not the way conflicts of interest works in the criminal law arena. So in any event, so he was one that mentioned that in his motion, and I thought he had it spot on. So he seems to be pretty accurate, and spot on. He doesn't seem to write a lot of fluff and misleading stuff or stuff that's hard to follow. So I do think his motions are nice and succinct in that sense. So that's all I got to say for now on that. The two says the Jewish bar mitzvah at 13, you're considered a man. Divorce case, I believe, at 14. Can you choose which parent to live with? What age legally can they insist to visit Markel's in Canada and Dan's grave? Well, they're in. Let's see. In most states, the children, if there is a divorce, they can have some say on which parent they want to go to. But ultimately, there's a visitation order in place, and that's supposed to be enforced. And then, unless there's really the kids are acting out to such a degree that the order is not going to be enforceable by the court, and it's caused such a problem and whatnot, then that could be adjusted. But normally, the courts are going to try to enforce that visitation requirement for both parents. And at what age can they legally insist to visit Markel's in Canada? Part of the thing is, who are they going to complain to? They don't know they can complain. They don't know that the Markells really want to see them much in Canada, perhaps. Maybe the Markells are, they're afraid to ask, hey, why don't you come on up here? Because they maybe will have a longer gap in being able to talk to them. So, then even I just don't see the boys taking any making use of any options to try to demand that they go see any of the Markells. And so that's something that I think that the uh, the Jewish aspect, I don't think that would have much of an aspect of the courts in Texas for having that be an implication for where the boys can decide where they want to go. Because right now, I think they've been brainwashed to such an extent that they don't know what they're missing out on. It's really the way it comes out. Harmony, you're asking if it wasn't already asked any update on Charlie's Princeton Antics visitors status, et cetera. No, South Dakota is, as that's where I assume he's back after being down there to potentially testify in his mom's murder trial. I think with South Dakota having such a lockdown information, we're just not going to know those kind of details. So sorry, I don't have anything more for you. They don't have a sunshine law in place like Florida does. Yeah, Robin Hood, you're saying those former Cowboys won't remember their father. No, Adelson is talking about him, but hopefully they'll read and listen to Ruth's book. I do think, it's natural inclination for the, I think the boys to start wanting to know more about their dad, but whether being told and whatnot is remains to be seen. So, um, yeah, I don't think they're gonna. I don't know if they're gonna be able to have the opportunity to even know about Ruth's book. So, don't know the details on that. Kathy, as I say, or Linda Mon, you're saying, are you playing tennis, pickleball, basketball to shake off the stressors of the job? No, I don't even. I've never played pickleball. I've played some tennis and basketball. I like those, but nothing about pickleball I've ever done. So, um, but I can't play pickup games in basketball because I've had too many ankle sprains. It's not worth it. Kathy Prosser, you're saying the state of Florida has been a big, big disappointment and going full on to get justice for Dan Markel. It's just appalling, really. Yes, it really is. And it's like, yeah, you just got to sit back and watch and see if they're going to get this thing right. All right. So let's see. Next we have JM is saying Wendy's going down. The kids have Dan's family show them unconditional love. Dan's parents were able to change the legislation for grandparents' rights. I'm not going to say that next comment. But Wendy's kids deserve justice. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, Wendy has been horrible. I guess I will say that in terms of the way the visitation was denied. Yeah, that is a horrible thing. I will say that. Totally agreed. And so, yeah, she will be prosecuted eventually, despite these major hiccups and whatnot. Let's see. I saw a question about will my wife ever join the podcast? Based on the nature of her job, that's not something that we can do. But otherwise, yes, definitely, I would have her on. Rick Rodriguez saying, "Why don't we hear about jail calls with Donna Adelson? When Charlie's in jail, we were hearing about the calls a lot." Well, that was just basically a short few days that we heard those. The rest of them were cut off, and they have not released them under the Freedom of Information. So apparently, the judges kept those under seal. So that's why we're not getting more of those. When it's next court date for Donna, it's the 10th, and that's going to be a case management hearing. I think in this particular one, she's probably going to be in the courtroom. They could do it via her on a video feed from the jail, but I think this whole conflict of interest thing, if I was a judge, just like she is sitting in that courtroom, and we're going to get to the bottom of any potential conflicts. There's some photos of Leslie and I already on the that was posted. I think it was about 3 4 weeks ago. A couple pictures. So we're both have interest in privacies to a large extent. So that's all we're going to share right now. But thanks for your support. Appreciate that. You agree with me about Rashbaum, says Linda Mon, not a first choice. The way he did a lot of stuff at trial, I just never seen that kind of stuff before. I thought it wasn't effective. Yes, that's a good question, Janie. I do plan to do a podcast on the 10th, so that's something that that I look forward to covering, and there won't be as much to go over that day, I don't think, because I don't think it's going to be that long of a hearing. But it's important nonetheless. I do plan to jump on that evening and cover it as well. And with that, I'm going to start to wind things up here. So if we, I'm going to look for one more question here. And I will, like I say, be covering. I plan to cover all the main hearings and stuff like that for this case. So, and I do want to branch off some other stuff. So, and I just don't want to have this be the only case I cover. Yeah, LJ, you're saying we were blessed. Charlie chose him as his attorney. In my opinion, guaranteed a guilty. Yeah, I mean, he's going to be guaranteed to be convicted no matter who his attorney is. The question is whether his attorney was conflicted or not. So it's not a question of whether there's enough evidence to find Charlie guilty or not. The whole issue on his appeal is going to be whether Rashomon was conflicted and whether that rose to a constitutional violation such that he needs to be granted a new trial. So that's a real concern. So the real issue is not whether he's guilty or not. There's always overwhelming evidence of that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. So thanks for your wishes, and I might be on just that one time unless I cover other cases. I'll be on that one time on the 10th, and then of course we're coming into the Christmas and New Year's, and I don't see a lot of activity on the case, but I may jump on and take another case or so, and so we'll go from there. And otherwise, you all have a good night. Have a safe holidays.